My name is Evelyn Sears, and I am 34 years old. On the final night of the year, my father stood on a stage before 140 guests, raised a champagne glass, and declared that he was handing the family company to my brother. At midnight, he announced, "I am officially passing Sears Meridian Group to my son, Colton, the one who truly earned it." The room erupted in applause. Champagne flutes lifted high. The band launched into something triumphant. My husband Nathan found my hand beneath the table and squeezed it. I squeezed back. Everyone began the countdown. 10, 9, 8. Confetti ready, noisemakers poised. My brother stood on that stage as if he belonged there, grinning, holding a glass that cost more than my first car. But here is what none of them knew. Not my father, not my brother, not even the band about to fall silent. I had been preparing for this moment for 14 months. And at exactly midnight, I pressed send. This is how it happened. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories, where we share real-life tales of family justice, quiet strength, and the moments that change everything. If this is your first time here, drop a comment and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a story. To understand my family, you must understand the company, Sears Meridian Group. My father, Gerald, founded it 30 years ago in a rented warehouse outside Charlotte with one delivery truck and a line of credit begged from 3 different banks. By the time I was in high school, it had become a mid-sized manufacturing and logistics firm. By the time I graduated from Wharton, it was publicly traded, $380 million market cap, 230 employees across 4 facilities. I joined as an intern the summer after business school. I was 26. Within 2 years, I rebuilt the internal audit system from scratch. Within 5, I restructured $47 million in short-term debt during a liquidity crisis that nearly shut us down. By 32, I was Vice President of Finance, the youngest VP in company history. My brother Colton joined 3 years ago. He was 28. He received the title of Vice President of Business Development, a corner office, an assistant, and a company credit card. What he did not receive was accountability. Colton's division had no measurable deliverables and no performance reviews tied to results. He showed up, shook hands at trade shows, ordered lunch on the company card, and called it client relations. When the board praised the company's turnaround after the liquidity crisis, my father stood at the quarterly meeting and thanked the team in broad, generic terms. The next day, he bought Colton a new car. That was how the Sears family worked. My father had a saying. I first heard it at 16. Sitting at the kitchen table doing homework while he spoke with my mother about the future. "A son carries the name," he said. "A daughter carries the memories." I carried far more than memories. Yet Gerald Sears never counted what his daughter carried. The first time my father used champagne as a stage prop was 3 years before that New Year's Eve, at his 60th birthday. Same estate, same ballroom, fewer guests, perhaps 80, but the same crystal chandeliers, the same 12-piece band, and the same catering company that folded napkins into little swans. Gerald Sears stood at the front in a charcoal suit, champagne flute in hand, and delivered a speech about legacy. He spoke of his own father, Hank Sears, who had built a small trucking company in the 70s and lost it when his 3 daughters sold it after his death. No son to carry it forward. No one who understood what it meant. "I promised myself I would never let that happen," my father said. He looked at Colton. "Tonight I want to introduce the future of Sears Meridian. My son, my heir, the one I have been raising for this." 80 people clapped. Colton walked forward and shook my father's hand. There were photos, a cake. The band played My Way. I stood near the back with an untouched champagne flute. Nathan leaned in. "You okay?" "I'm fine." I set the glass on the nearest table. I had been fine my whole life. That night, driving home, Nathan stayed silent for 20 minutes. Then he said, "He didn't mention you at all." "I know. You saved that company 2 years ago." "I know that too." I watched the highway lines pass and thought about my grandfather, Hank Sears, the man who lost everything because he trusted no one who did not share his last name. My father had spent his whole life trying not to repeat that mistake. Instead, he made a different one. I was the first person in the building every morning. At 6:30, the parking lot was empty except for the night security guard ending his shift. I would nod at him, badge in, walk past the dark offices, and settle at my desk beside the server room. My office shared a wall with the company's data infrastructure. When the servers hummed at night during batch processing, I could feel it through the floor. I liked that sound. It meant the numbers were running. It meant the system I built was working. Every audit trail in that company ran through my department. Vendor payments, payroll cycles, revenue recognition, quarterly SEC filings. I reviewed them all, not because it was required at my level, but because I could not stop. That was my weakness, not naivety, not blind loyalty, but perfectionism and over-responsibility. I could not walk away from a spreadsheet with a rounding error. I could not leave the building knowing a purchase order had not been cross-referenced. 230 people depended on those numbers being right, their mortgages, their children's college funds, their retirement accounts. My mother called it overwork. "You're going to burn out, sweetheart," she would say on the phone. "Your brother knows how to delegate. You should learn from him." Colton knew how to delegate because Colton did not do anything worth holding on to. He delegated the work because there was no real work to begin with. But in my mother's vocabulary, that was leadership. I no longer argued with her. I had stopped arguing about Colton long ago. It never changed anything. She would simply lower her voice and say the same thing she always said. "I will tell you what that was, but not yet." Thanksgiving, 14 months before the New Year's Eve party. Gerald, Diane, Colton, Colton's girlfriend Lauren, Nathan, and me. 6 people around a table meant for 12. Turkey, cranberry sauce, and a casserole my mother had made from a recipe clipped from a magazine in 1994. My father brought up succession, not subtly. He set down his fork and said, "I want to talk about the transition plan." He laid it out. Colton would move into a co-CEO role by spring, full CEO by the following January. The board would approve it. "Smooth handoff," Gerald said. "No drama." I set down my fork. "Have you considered a formal succession committee, board-level oversight, or independent evaluation of candidates?" The table fell silent. Gerald looked at me as if I had spoken in a foreign language. "This is not a committee decision, Evelyn. This is family." Colton leaned back, smiled, and said nothing. He did not need to. My mother touched my arm beneath the table. I knew what was coming. "Don't make this harder than it has to be," she said quietly, almost gently, the way she always spoke when she wanted me to stop talking. I picked up my fork, ate a bite of casserole, and let it go. But here is what stayed with me after that dinner. Colton's quarterly numbers. His division had reported record vendor acquisitions that quarter, 12 new contracts, revenue projections up 19%. On paper, it looked like a miracle. I ran those numbers through my audit system the following Monday morning. 12 new contracts. 3 of them were with the same vendor under slightly different names. All payments routed to a single receiving account. I printed the report, took it home, and sat on it for 2 weeks. That was the beginning. The vendor was called Greystone Industrial Supply. I had never heard of them before that Thanksgiving audit. They had appeared in our system 8 months earlier, listed as a supplier of specialized logistics components. Colton's division had signed them. I ran the standard checks. Business address was a P.O. box in Wilmington, Delaware. No physical office, no company website, no employees listed on LinkedIn, no Better Business Bureau profile, no state contractor registration. The payments were structured carefully. Monthly wire transfers, each one just under the reporting threshold. 3 contracts, 3 slightly different entity names. Greystone Industrial Supply LLC, Greystone Logistics Solutions Incorporated, and Greystone Supply Group, all sharing the same receiving account number. Someone had done this before, or someone had been told exactly how to do it. I pulled the payment authorizations. Everyone had been approved within Colton's division. His assistant had processed the paperwork, and his signature was on the contract originals. In 8 months, a total of $1.2 million had been dispersed to the Greystone entities for a vendor that, as far as I could tell, did not manufacture, ship, or deliver anything. I did not confront Colton. I did not go to my father. I did not call the board. I printed every document, every wire record, every contract. I placed them in a folder, slipped the folder into my bag, and drove home. Nathan was in the kitchen when I came in. He looked at the 2-inch stack of paper in my arms and said, "What are you reading?" I set the folder on the kitchen table, sat down, and poured a glass of water. The beginning of something I cannot undo. He pulled out a chair and sat across from me. He did not ask me to explain. He simply waited. That weekend, I spread every printout across our dining table. It covered the entire surface. Wire transfer records on the left, contract copies in the center, entity registration documents on the right. Nathan stood at the edge with his arms crossed, reading upside down. He was an associate at a litigation firm that handled corporate compliance cases. Not securities law exactly, but close enough. Shell Company, he said, pointing at the Delaware registration in the name of David Morrell. He looked at me. Do you know that name? No, but Colton attended a trade conference in Atlanta 14 months ago. I pulled the attendee list. David Morrell was listed as a vendor representative at booth 17. Nathan exhaled slowly. If this is what it looks like, it's not just internal fraud. The company is publicly traded. SEC filings, investor disclosures, quarterly reports. If those vendor payments are fraudulent, the financial statements Sears Meridian filed with the SEC are materially misstated. I know that makes it securities fraud. I know that too. He was quiet for a moment. Then you should file a whistleblower complaint. SEC confidential. Dodd-Frank protects your identity. If the sanctions exceed $1 million, you could be eligible for an award of 10 to 30%. I shook my head. I'm not doing this for money. I know you're not. But you need to do it through a system that protects you, because if you go to Gerald with this, he will bury it. And if he buries it, those 230 employees are the ones who will pay when it finally comes out. He was right. If I tried to handle this inside the family, it would disappear. Not for the money, I told myself. For the record. In December of the previous year, 13 months before the New Year's Eve party, I sat at the kitchen table after Nathan had gone to bed. My laptop was open to the SEC whistleblower tip submission portal, a long form with fields for company information, alleged violations, and supporting documentation. I typed for 2 hours, detailing the Greystone entities, the payment patterns, the structuring, and Colton's signatures. I attached the scanned printouts and hit submit at 11:47 at night. Confirmation screen. Tip accepted. Reference number assigned. A receipt email arrived seconds later. My phone buzzed on the table. I stared at the notification. 14 characters. A reference number that meant someone outside my family, outside that building, outside Gerald's orbit, now knew what I knew. I screenshot the confirmation, saved it in an encrypted folder on a thumb drive, and placed the thumb drive in our home safe next to our marriage certificate and Nathan's grandfather's pocket watch. At work the next Monday, I walked in at 6:30 like always, nodded at the night guard, sat at my desk, and opened the quarterly financials Gerald had asked me to prepare for the board. I did my job, every number perfect, every footnote accurate. Because that was the point. I was not sabotaging anything. I was doing my job better than anyone else in that building. But I also started building a second file, private and offline. Every Greystone transaction logged. Every approval chain traced. Every email between Colton's assistant and the accounts payable department. Dated, organized, and cross-referenced. The company held its holiday party that week. Gerald stood in the cafeteria with a champagne glass and toasted, "Another record year." Everyone raised their cups. Colton grinned. I held my glass, did not drink, and smiled when they looked my way. If you have ever sat across a table from someone who took credit for everything you built and smiled through it, you know this feeling. If this story is hitting close to home, hit that subscribe button and leave a comment below. Your story matters too. Now let me tell you what I found next. 3 months after I filed, the SEC made contact. Not a phone call, not a letter, a message through the secure portal. An investigator had been assigned. They had reviewed my initial submission and opened a preliminary investigation into Sears Meridian Group. They wanted more. Specifically, they wanted internal documentation, payment authorization workflows, vendor onboarding records, and communication logs between the Business Development Division and the Accounts Payable Department. I had all of it. Every piece. Because I was the Vice President of Finance. These were my files, my system, my audit trails. Accessing them was not espionage. It was my job. Over the next 4 weeks, I compiled a second submission, organized by category, payment records on top, vendor registrations in the middle, internal memos at the bottom. I uploaded them through the secure portal on a Sunday evening while Nathan read on the couch. Done, he asked without looking up. Second batch. How many more? At least one, maybe two. They need executive-level knowledge. He nodded. We did not discuss it further. At work, the rhythm continued. Gerald announced a company-wide town hall for the following month. The subject line on the calendar invite read, "The future of Sears Meridian." Everyone in the building knew what that meant. Succession. Colton's name on the masthead. My assistant Pam added it to my calendar and paused at my door. Should I block travel that week? No, I'll be here. She looked at me a second too long. Pam had been with me for 6 years. She did not miss things. Okay, she said and left. I opened the SEC portal and checked the status. Active. Under review. Waiting for more. I had more. The town hall was held in the main conference room, standing room only. Every employee who could attend did. Gerald brought a podium, a projector, and a slide deck with a timeline. The slide read, Leadership Transition, Sears Meridian Group. Below, it was a photo of Colton in a suit, arms crossed, smiling. The kind of photo that belongs on the cover of a magazine no one reads. Gerald spoke for 20 minutes about the founding story, the early years, the growth. Then he said every great company needs a successor who understands not just the numbers but the people. Someone who builds relationships. Someone who leads with vision. He paused and looked at Colton. I am proud to announce that my son Colton Sears will begin serving as co-CEO in training effective this spring. Applause. Not thunderous. Polite. The kind of clapping that fills a room without conviction. Colton took the podium. His speech was polished and rehearsed. Gerald's speechwriter had clearly drafted it. He thanked the employees, thanked the board, thanked everyone who made this possible. He did not mention my name. After the meeting, Pam came to my office and closed the door. He didn't even say your name. I noticed. You rebuilt the audit system. You saved the company in 2020. You are the reason payroll clears every 2 weeks. Pam. She stopped. I looked at her. I know what I did. I do not need Colton to list it. That evening my mother called. Wasn't it wonderful? Your brother looked so presidential. She actually said that. Presidential? I said. He looked like someone who practiced in front of a mirror. There was a pause. Just my name, Evelyn, followed by a period of silence. It was late on a Thursday in May. Most of the building had cleared out by 6. I was still at my desk finishing the quarterly vendor reconciliation. Routine work, the kind I could do with my eyes half closed. Gerald's office was dark. He was at a golf fundraiser in Hilton Head and would not return until Monday. I needed the physical vendor master file. Gerald kept the originals in a locked filing cabinet behind his desk. He was old-fashioned that way. Digital copies lived on the server. Originals lived in Gerald's cabinet. Paper does not crash, he used to say. I had watched him open that cabinet hundreds of times. He kept the key in the top right drawer of his desk, tucked behind a box of monogrammed pens from his 50th birthday. I walked into his office. The light from the hallway cut a stripe across the carpet. I opened the drawer, found the key behind the pens, small, brass, and scratched with age. I opened the cabinet. Third folder from the front, labeled Vendor Contracts, Current Year. Inside were 12 folders, one for each active vendor. The 6th was marked Greystone Industrial Supply. Inside was the original contract signed by Colton and countersigned by David Morrell. Terms: monthly retainer for logistics consulting services. Deliverables: none specified. Payment schedule: structured monthly transfers. I photographed every page, front and back. 17 images. I returned the folder to its exact position, closed the cabinet, locked it, placed the key back behind the pens, and walked out. Badge out, parking lot car. I drove home with my phone on the passenger seat. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the weight of certainty. 14 months of suspicion, and now I held proof. Helen Ostraki had served on the board of Sears Meridian for 9 years. Retired CFO of a packaging company 3 times our size. Sharp, steady. The kind of woman who wore reading glasses on a chain and still made boardroom lawyers nervous. She had been my mentor since my second year. That month, over coffee, I asked her a question I had never asked before. Helen, when you were CFO, did you ever see vendor contracts that didn't make sense? She set her cup down and looked at me over those reading glasses. Once. I brought it to the board. They formed a subcommittee. The subcommittee met twice. Then the vendor contract was reclassified as a consulting agreement, and nobody mentioned it again. What happened to the vendor? Still active, last I checked. She paused. Is this about Greystone? My coffee was halfway to my mouth. I froze. Helen leaned forward. I'm 58 years old, Evelyn. I've been reading financial statements since before you were born. I noticed the Greystone entities 6 months ago. 3 names, 1 account, structured payments below the reporting line. Why didn't you say anything? Because the last time I said something, I learned that speaking up inside these walls doesn't change anything. It just changes who gets to stay. She picked up her cup. But you have something I didn't have back then. What? Access, youth, and a husband who understands securities law. I did not confirm anything. She did not ask me to. She simply said, whatever path you're on, finish it. I finished my coffee. We talked about the weather. She told me about her garden. We did not mention Greystone again. In June came the 3rd submission to the SEC. This one was different. The first 2 had been financial records, numbers, and patterns. This one had faces. I uploaded the photographs of the original Greystone contract, Colton's signature clear as a headline, David Morrell's countersignature beside it. I included the corporate registration for Greystone Industrial Supply LLC, listing David Morrell as sole member, and the conference attendee list from Atlanta 14 months earlier showing both Colton Sears and David Morrell at the same trade show. The investigator responded within a week through the secure portal. The documentation is substantial. We are building a formal case file. To proceed to the enforcement stage, we will need one additional element, evidence of executive-level knowledge or direction, specifically communication demonstrating that senior leadership was aware of the arrangement. Senior leadership. They meant Gerald. They were asking me to prove that my father knew. I sat with that for a week. Not because I doubted it, but because proving it meant something I could not take back. The following Tuesday, Gerald took me to lunch at a downtown steakhouse, just the 2 of us. That almost never happened. He ordered a bourbon and leaned back. I know this succession plan is hard for you, he said. You have given more to this company than most people will ever understand. But passing it to Colton, it is what is right for the family. I looked at him across the table, the man who built an empire and confused his son's last name for merit. I understand, I said. I understood far more than he would ever know. The executive-level evidence was somewhere in his office, in a locked cabinet behind a brass key. In August, on a Wednesday, Gerald was in New York for investor meetings and would be gone for 2 days. I went to his office at 7 in the evening. The building was almost empty. Badge in. Hallway lights flickered on with motion sensors. My footsteps on the carpet were the only sound. The key was behind the pens. Same as before. Same scratch on the brass. Same weight in my palm. I opened the cabinet. This time I was not looking for vendor contracts. I was looking for a folder I had noticed last time but not opened. Labeled CS Vendor Review. CS for Colton Sears. Inside were 4 pages of an email chain between Gerald and Colton dated 11 months earlier. Subject line, re Greystone, handle quietly. The first email was from Colton. Dad, Greystone invoice for Q3 is ready. Same structure as before. Dave says he needs the wire by Friday. Gerald's reply, I have reviewed the arrangement. The numbers work for the quarter. Make sure the invoicing does not cross the threshold. I will handle the board questions. I read it twice, then 3 times. Let the words settle. Gerald knew. Gerald directed it. Gerald wrote, I will handle the board questions like he was scheduling a lunch meeting. I photographed both pages, returned the folder, locked the cabinet, placed the key behind the pens, and walked out. At home, Nathan was at the kitchen table. I sat across from him and handed him my phone. He read the photos, exhaled, and closed his eyes. "This is it," he said. "This is the executive-level knowledge they need." I took the phone back and looked at the screenshot of Gerald's words, "I will handle the board questions." And I thought about another phrase he loved to use, the one about Colton, the one who actually earned it. The irony was not complicated. It was just complete. My father had built a wall to protect his son's fraud and called it legacy. I submitted the email that weekend. The SEC confirmed receipt within hours. September bled into October. The SEC investigator confirmed that the case was now in the formal enforcement pipeline. Timeline. I asked through the portal. Months, came the answer, not weeks. I could wait. I had been waiting my entire life for people to see what I saw. A few more months was nothing. At the office, life moved at its own pace. Colton started redecorating Gerald's corner office. New desk, new bookshelves, a nameplate that read Colton Sears, CO, even though the title had not yet been officially conferred. Gerald walked past it one morning, smiled, and kept walking. I walked past it every single day on the way to the server room. October board meeting. Gerald presented the formal CEO transition plan. Colton Sears to assume the role of Chief Executive Officer effective January 1st, phased handover during the fourth quarter. Announcement to employees and shareholders in December. The board voted 5 in favor, 2 against. Helen Ostrowski voted no. She did not explain why. She did not need to. I abstained due to conflict of interest. I was family and I was finance. The abstention was protocol, but it felt like something more. That evening, I sat in my car in the office parking lot for 15 minutes before starting the engine. Nathan called. "How did it go?" 5-2. They approved it. When? January 1st. He was quiet. Then what do you need? One more signature. One more contract from Colton through Greystone. Something recent. Something that proves the scheme is still active. When? Soon. He is going to sign something before year-end. He always does. Q4 vendor pushes are his thing. Nathan. And then I finished this. I started the car, drove home, made dinner, and did not think about champagne. November, 3 days before Thanksgiving, a purchase order landed on my desk. Routing slip attached. Colton's division, Greystone Logistics Solutions Incorporated, amount, $890,000. Category, Logistics Consulting Services. Duration 6 months. The biggest single Greystone contract yet. Under company policy, any vendor payment exceeding $500,000 required the signature of the VP of Finance. That was me. Colton needed my authorization to complete the transaction. The routing slip sat on my desk for 1 hour. I looked at it the way a surgeon looks at an X-ray clinical, detached, reading the damage underneath. Then I signed it. I authorized the payment because that was my job. Because refusing it without stated cause would have triggered questions I was not ready to answer. And because I needed that contract in the SEC file, a fresh signature, a current transaction, proof that the scheme was not historical. It was ongoing. Colton did not call to thank me. He did not even know it had crossed my desk. His assistant had routed it through the standard approval chain. I was a checkbox. That evening, I scanned the signed contract, the routing slip, and the wire authorization. I opened the SEC portal and uploaded them as a supplemental filing. The final piece. The golden documents were now complete. Shell company registration, payment records, Colton's signatures across 18 months of transactions, Gerald's cover-up email, and now the November contract with my own approval. A VP of Finance doing her job, unknowingly authorizing her brother's fraud. I closed the laptop, picked up my phone, and texted Nathan one word. Done. He replied with a period. No words, just acknowledgement. Everything was in the file. Everything was with the SEC. All that remained was timing. The invitation arrived the first week of December. Cream card stock, engraved lettering, gold border. Gerald and Diane Sears cordially request your presence at their annual New Year's Eve celebration. A very special announcement will be made at midnight. Black tie. Estate ballroom. RSVP by December 15th. I held the card in my kitchen, read it twice, and set it on the counter next to the fruit bowl. A very special announcement. Midnight. 140 guests. I knew exactly what the announcement would be. The succession. The crown, the your son moment. Champagne, band, the whole production. My mother called that afternoon. Did you get the invitation? I did. Wear something nice, sweetheart. This is Colton's night. She paused. And Evelyn. Yes, Mom. Don't make this harder than it has to be. There it was. The same 6 words she had used at Thanksgiving. The same quiet, almost caring tone designed to make me shrink just enough to fit inside the space they had assigned me. I will be there, Mom. Good. Your father is really looking forward to it. I hung up, walked to my home office, and opened my laptop. The SEC case file was bookmarked. I clicked it, scrolled through the submissions, 4 batches, 14 months of documentation, contracts, wire records, corporate registrations, Gerald's email, Colton's signatures, the November contract, all of it sitting in a federal system waiting. I closed the laptop, went back to the kitchen, and picked up the invitation again. Black tie. Estate ballroom. A very special announcement at midnight. I opened my closet. I picked out a black structured top and silver statement earrings. Simple, clean, the kind of outfit that does not ask for attention but does not apologize for being in the room. I would be there, and I would bring my phone. Mid-December, my attorney called, not Nathan. I had retained her separately through a different firm. Clean lines, no overlap, no conflicts. Her name was Claire. She was direct. The SEC has confirmed the investigation is active. Formal enforcement referral is on the table. If new evidence is submitted before any corporate action is finalized, it creates a clear timing record. Meaning if I submitted supplemental evidence before the succession took effect, it would demonstrate that the SEC had material information prior to the leadership change. That strengthens the case and complicates any argument that the transition was conducted in good faith. I understood. The succession was scheduled for January 1st. The announcement at midnight on New Year's Eve was the public moment. If I submitted before that announcement, the SEC's record would show they received fraud documentation before the company handed itself to the person committing the fraud. So the timing matters, I said. The timing is everything. I spent the next 2 weeks preparing a supplemental filing, a clean summary, a timeline connecting every Greystone transaction from month 1 to month 18, cross-referenced with Colton's travel records, Gerald's email, and the November contract. 42 pages. 3 contracts. 1 cover-up directive. 1 complete pattern. I formatted it as a single PDF, uploaded it to the SEC's electronic submission portal as a draft. Saved, not submitted. 1 button away. Approve and submit. 2 words on a gray button. All I had to do was tap it. Nathan asked me one night. When? Midnight, I said. He did not ask why midnight. He already knew. Gerald had chosen midnight. Gerald had chosen the stage. Gerald had chosen the audience. I was just choosing the same clock. She spent 14 months building a case that fit inside a single email. If you know what it is like to stay quiet while everyone else celebrates the wrong person, stay with me. The countdown is about to start. Like this video if you are watching past midnight too. December 31st. I woke up at 6:15, force of habit. The bedroom was dark. Nathan was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed dressed. We did not talk about tonight. Not yet. I went downstairs, made coffee, toast with butter, sat at the kitchen table. Normal. Ordinary. A Tuesday morning routine on the last day of the year. I opened my phone. The SEC portal was bookmarked. I tapped it. The draft submission was there. 42 pages attached. Status, draft. 1 gray button. Approve and submit. I closed the app. Drank my tofia. A text from Colton at 8:37. Sis, tonight is going to be great. Dad has something special planned. You should see the champagne they ordered. 32 cases. 32 cases for 140 guests. That was almost 3 bottles per person. Gerald Sears did not do anything at half volume. I typed back, cannot wait. Deleted the period. Typed it again with a period. Nathan came downstairs. You okay? Ask me tomorrow. He poured his own coffee. We sat across from each other. The folder was not on the table anymore. The printouts were not spread across the dining room. There was nothing to spread. Everything was digital now. Everything was in the system. 14 months of documentation compressed into a 42-page PDF sitting in a government server, waiting for one thumb press. At 4 in the afternoon, I showered, dried my hair, and put it up in a French twist. Platinum blonde, pulled tight. I put on the black structured top and the silver earrings. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. I did not look like someone about to end her brother's career and put her father under investigation. I looked like someone going to a party. That was the point. Nathan drove. He always drove when we went to the estate. I sat in the passenger seat and watched the road. 45 minutes from our house in the suburbs to the family property. Highway first, then 2-lane county roads, then the long gravel driveway lined with catering trucks and a valet station my mother had set up because she did not want 140 cars on the lawn. We passed a field of winter stubble and bare trees. The sun was already gone, leaving only a gray line where the horizon used to be. Nathan said, "You don't have to do this tonight. I don't have to do this any night." I looked at him. But they chose tonight. They made it public. 140 witnesses, a band, a champagne toast. They chose the stage. I didn't pick the audience. His jaw tightened. He nodded. My phone buzzed. A text from Claire, my attorney. Portal confirmed operational. Ready when you are. I read it, did not reply, and slipped the phone back into my clutch. We turned onto the gravel drive. Through the trees, I could see the house. Lights glowing in every window, a white tent over the back terrace. The band was doing a sound check. I could hear the bass through the car windows. Nathan parked at the edge of the valet line. We sat for a moment, the engine ticking. A caterer walked past carrying a tray of champagne glasses. Crystal. Gerald's signature. Nathan reached over and took my hand. He squeezed it once. Not the way you squeeze when you are scared, but the way you squeeze when you are ready. The first squeeze. The one before the party. The one that meant, I am with you. Whatever happens next, I am with you. Let's go, I said. The ballroom was Gerald's masterpiece. Crystal chandeliers hung from a vaulted ceiling. Hardwood floors polished to a mirror shine. A 12-piece band played standards on a raised stage. Sinatra, Bennett. The kind of music my father believed made people feel wealthy. Champagne towers stood tall. 3 of them. Stacked glasses catching the light. Waitstaff in black vests wove through the crowd with silver trays of hors d'oeuvres I could not name. 140 guests. I counted as I worked the room. Board members in tailored suits, business partners with their wives, the mayor of Charlotte, 2 state representatives, the company's outside legal counsel, a man named Phillips who charged $400 an hour and looked like he had never missed a meal. 3 journalists from the regional business press stood near the bar with notebooks. Gerald was holding court near the terrace doors, bourbon in hand. Colton stood beside him in a new charcoal suit, slim cut. On his wrist was the Patek Philippe watch Gerald had given him for Christmas. I knew because my mother had texted me a photo of the receipt. "Isn't it stunning?" she had written. I had not replied. Diane was adjusting Colton's lapel, smoothing the fabric, maternal, proud, the perfect portrait of a family about to crown its prince. I crossed the room, shaking hands and smiling. "Happy New Year. So glad you could come. The ballroom looks wonderful. Small talk. Easy. Practiced." Helen Ostraki was near the bar sipping water. She caught my eye across the room and gave a brief nod. No words. I checked my phone. 10:47, the draft submission was still there. Approve and submit. Gray button. Waiting. I slipped the phone back into my clutch and picked up a glass of champagne. I did not drink. Not yet. By 11:15, the party was in full rhythm. Laughter, music, and the constant clink of glasses. I touched Nathan's arm. "I'll be right back." He looked at me and understood. "Take your time." I walked out of the ballroom and down the hallway. The estate was a big house, the kind with hallways that echoed when no one was in them. Gerald's home office was at the end of the east wing. The door was open. I stepped inside. The filing cabinet stood against the wall where it always stood. The desk was neat. I opened the top right drawer. The key was there behind the box of monogrammed pens. Same brass. Same scratch. I picked it up, felt its weight in my palm. I did not need it anymore. Every document that mattered was already in the SEC's system. The contracts, the signatures, the email. Gerald's words captured in pixels on a government server. I placed the key back in its exact position behind the pens, closed the drawer, and stood in the dark office for a moment. Through the wall, I could hear the muffled bass and trumpet of the band and a woman's laugh somewhere in the hallway. I walked back to the ballroom. Nathan was by the terrace doors holding a glass of water. He handed me my champagne. "Done?" he asked. There was nothing to do. I just needed to put something back. He did not ask what. He took my arm. We walked toward the dance floor. "It's almost midnight," he said. "I know." The band played a slow song. We did not dance. We simply stood near the edge and waited. At 11:58, the band stopped mid-song. Gerald walked to the stage. Someone handed him a microphone. Someone else handed him a fresh champagne glass, full, bubbles rising. The room went quiet. 140 faces turned toward the stage. The chandeliers threw little diamonds of light across the ceiling. Gerald cleared his throat. 30 years ago, he began, I started this company in a rented warehouse outside of Charlotte with one truck and a line of credit that 3 banks had the good sense to approve. A warm, practiced laugh rippled through the crowd. Gerald was good at this. He had always been good at this. He traced the history, the early contracts, the first warehouse expansion, the IPO, the growth years. 230 employees who counted on Sears Meridian to make payroll every 2 weeks. Then he paused, looked at the crowd, and found Colton in the front row. "But every founder has to face one question," Gerald said. "Who carries it forward? Who do you trust with the thing you built?" He lifted his glass. The room lifted theirs. "Tonight, at the start of a new year, I am officially handing the leadership of Sears Meridian Group to my son, Colton Sears." Gerald's voice caught just slightly. Emotion or theater? I could never tell the difference with him. The one who actually earned it. Standing ovation. Champagne raised high. Colton walked to the stage, shook Gerald's hand. Flashbulbs from the business press popped. Diane in the front row dabbed her eyes with a napkin. I stood near the back wall. Nathan's hand found mine under my clutch. The second squeeze. The one that meant, now. Someone started the countdown. 10, 9, 8. The room chanted together. 7. I opened my clutch, took out my phone and unlocked it. 6. I opened the SEC portal. The draft submission loaded. 42 pages, 3 contracts, 1 cover-up email, 1 timeline. 5. The gray button. Approve and submit. My thumb hovered over it. 4. Nathan leaned close to my ear. "You sure?" 3. "I have been sure for 14 months. 2. I took a breath. 1. Midnight. Fireworks erupted on the terrace. Through the glass doors, gold and silver sparks rained down over the lawn. The room exploded with cheers, noisemakers, and popping champagne corks. The band launched into Auld Lang Syne. Confetti fell from above the chandeliers. I tapped the button. The screen changed. Loading circle. Then, submission received. Reference number SEC WB 25-41738. Timestamp 12 o'clock and 3 seconds a.m. Eastern Standard Time. 3 seconds past midnight. The last year was gone. The new year had evidence. I closed the app, locked the phone, and put it back in my clutch. I picked up my champagne glass and took 1 sip. The bubbles were still fresh. My phone buzzed inside the clutch. Confirmation email. The same notification sound I had heard 13 months earlier. I silenced it without looking. Nathan pulled me close, one arm around my waist. "Happy New Year," he said. "Happy New Year." For 11 minutes, the party continued. The band played. People danced. Colton accepted congratulations near the stage. Gerald shook hands by the bar. Diane posed for photos. Nathan and I danced, one slow song. His hand on my back. My phone in my clutch. The most expensive email I had ever sent already sitting in a federal server. 11 minutes of normal. Then the first phone buzzed. 1211 Marcus Webb, chief of staff, stood near the bar in a gray suit and conservative tie, the kind of man who made his living standing 3 feet behind Gerald Sears and knowing everything before Gerald did. His phone buzzed. He pulled it from his jacket, read the screen, and read it again. The company's outside law firm ran an automated regulatory monitoring system. Any new filing with the SEC that referenced Sears Meridian Group triggered an alert. It was a standard service most public companies had. The kind of thing nobody thinks about until the alert actually fires. It had just fired. Marcus set down his drink. His face changed the way a face changes when the math stops working. Not panic, not fear, just a sudden recalculation of everything. He walked toward Gerald. Not fast, not slow. The measured pace of a man who knows that what he is about to say cannot be unsaid. Gerald was still by the terrace doors, holding his champagne glass, smiling and shaking a board member's hand. Marcus leaned in close to his ear. I could not hear the words from across the room, but I could read the posture. Marcus's hand on Gerald's shoulder, Gerald's smile dropping, not gradually, but all at once like a light switch. Gerald set down his champagne glass on the nearest table. He did not finish it. The glass sat there untouched, bubbles rising and going nowhere. He whispered something back to Marcus. Marcus shook his head. Gerald looked across the room. His eyes moved through the crowd, past the dancers, past the waitstaff, past Colton near the stage, and found me standing near the back wall with Nathan beside me, champagne in my hand. I held his gaze and did not look away. He stared at me for what felt like a full minute. Then he turned back to Marcus. At 12:13, Gerald pulled the outside counsel Phillips into a corner by the terrace doors. An urgent conversation. Phillips checked his phone, nodded, and his jaw tightened. They whispered. Colton noticed. He had been accepting congratulations near the stage, champagne in hand, grinning. He crossed the room. Dad, what's going on? Not now, Colton. Colton's grin slipped. He looked at Marcus, then at Phillips. Neither looked back. The whispers spread like water through cracks. Board members checking phones. A cluster of suits near the bar, heads together. Two directors looked at each other across the room, and one mouthed something I could not read. Helen Ostrowski stood near the dessert table. She was not checking her phone. She was watching, sipping water. Patient. Diane crossed the room to Gerald. What happened? You look pale. We have a problem. What kind of problem? Gerald's voice was low and controlled, but it carried. The kind that does not wait until morning. Diane looked at Phillips, then Marcus, then around the room at the guests who were still dancing and laughing, still unaware. Then she looked at me. I was standing in the same spot, Nathan's hand on my arm, my champagne halfway gone. She looked at me the way you look at someone when you suspect them of something but cannot prove it. A long look. Then she turned back to Gerald. The band was still playing, but the energy had shifted. Everyone felt it. At 12:17, Gerald walked back to the stage. Slow. Measured. The walk of a man carrying something heavy that nobody else could see. He signaled the band leader with a raised hand. The music stopped mid-phrase. Trumpet cut short. Drums fell silent. The bass player's hand went flat on the strings. The silence hit the room like a wall. 140 faces turned toward the stage for the second time that night. Gerald picked up the microphone. His hand was steady. His voice was not. I need to make a brief additional announcement. The room was still, not the comfortable stillness of anticipation, but the rigid stillness of alarm. Due to a regulatory matter that has just come to our attention, the leadership transition I announced earlier will be put on hold. Effective immediately. Complete silence. The kind where you could hear champagne bubbles breaking at the surface. Colton stood 3 feet from the stage, champagne glass still in his hand. What? He stepped forward. Dad, what are you talking about? You just told every person in this room that I am CEO. Colton, please. Not here. You stood on that stage and said, not here. Gerald's voice cracked, not with emotion, but with failing authority. Colton's face drained of color. The Patek Philippe on his wrist caught the chandelier light. Murmurs spread through the room. Guests looked at each other. The band leader stood frozen, baton in hand. A champagne glass clinked against a table somewhere behind me. A caterer paused mid-step near the dessert tower. I stood near the back wall, Nathan beside me. My champagne was in my hand. I took one more sip. The band did not play again. By 12:25, the party was breaking apart. Guests reached for coats. Awkward goodbyes at the door. Thank you for a lovely evening. Happy New Year. Drive safe. The language of people who did not know what they had just witnessed but knew they should leave. Colton was on the terrace, phone pressed to his ear, pacing. His voice carried through the glass doors, high-pitched and panicked. I walked down the hallway toward the coat closet. Gerald was sitting on a bench near the staircase, alone, hands on his knees, suit jacket unbuttoned. He looked 10 years older than he had 2 hours ago. He saw me. It was you. Not a question. I said nothing. I stood in the hallway and let him fill the silence. How long? 14 months. He exhaled, a long breath, the kind that empties you. I knew about Greystone. I thought I could manage it. Fix it before anyone noticed. Restructure the contracts. Phase out the vendor. You were not fixing it. You were hiding it. He stared at the floor. My father lost everything because he had no son to carry it forward. I told myself I would not make the same mistake. He looked up at me. His eyes were red but dry. I knew Colton was not ready. I just could not let your grandfather be right. I stood there and let that sentence hang in the air. My father, 63 years old, sitting on a bench in a hallway while his party collapsed around him, trapped by a dead man's failure. Grandpa did not lose his company because of his daughters. He lost it because he never trusted them. Diane appeared at the end of the hallway, coat on, clutch in hand. Her eyes were hard, not sad, not confused, but angry. She walked toward me, heels clicking sharply on the hardwood. Gerald did not stand up. Do you understand what you have done? Her voice was tight and controlled, the same control she had used my entire life to smooth over every crack in this family. To this family. To your father. To everything he has built. I waited. I knew what was coming. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Same words. Same tone. The phrase she had used at every Thanksgiving, every phone call, every moment I had ever tried to be heard. But this time, I was done hearing it. It was already hard, Mom. My voice stayed level. I did not raise it. You just never noticed. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her jaw worked, but nothing came out. For the first time in my life, Diane Sears had no follow-up, no smoothing, no redirect. She turned and walked to the front door without looking back. Nathan appeared with my coat draped over his arm. He handed it to me. I put it on. We walked to the front door together. The driveway was lined with departing cars, red taillights disappearing down the gravel drive. The catering trucks were already packing up. The tent over the terrace was dark. I stopped at the car and looked back at the house. Every window was still lit, a big house full of empty light. Nathan opened the door for me. I got in. He drove. We did not speak for the first 20 minutes. You okay? He finally asked. Not yet. But I will be. January arrived, and the aftermath came in waves. The first week, Sears Meridian Group filed an 8K with the SEC disclosing an internal investigation into vendor-related transactions within the Business Development Division. The stock dropped 14% in 2 trading days. The Charlotte Business Journal ran it on the front page. Sears Meridian discloses SEC probe. The second week, the board convened an emergency session that lasted 6 hours behind closed doors. When they emerged, Gerald Sears had agreed to step aside as CEO pending the outcome of the investigation. No severance negotiation. No transition period. Effective immediately. Helen Ostrowski was named interim chair of the board. The third week, Colton was placed on administrative leave. His VP title was suspended and his access badge deactivated. The Greystone Industrial Supply accounts were frozen by court order. David Morrell was served with a subpoena at his home in Atlanta. The board asked me to serve as interim chief financial officer. I accepted. My first act was a full vendor audit across all 4 facilities, transparent, documented, and by the book. The 230 employees kept their jobs. The company did not collapse. It pivoted. I restructured the vendor pipeline within 60 days, replacing Greystone's contracts with 3 vetted suppliers. Payroll cleared every 2 weeks without interruption. Colton called me once. I let it go to voicemail. His message was short, "I hope you're happy." I deleted it. Gerald sent a handwritten letter on his personal stationery. 2 sentences. "You were always the backbone." I was too blind to say it. I read it, folded it, and placed it in my desk drawer at work. I did not reply. In February, a new board member asked me during a committee meeting how I had come to the CFO role. I looked at her across the conference table. I was the one who actually earned it. The room went quiet. Helen Ostraki smiled into her water glass. I did not say it to be clever. I said it because it was true, and because the last person to use those words had been wrong. March. The SEC investigation was ongoing. My attorney Claire told me the enforcement case was progressing. Total sanctions under consideration exceeded $4 million. As a whistleblower, my award could range from $400,000 to $1.2 million. I told her I did not want to think about the number yet. I thought about the quarterly audit instead. For the first time in years, it was clean, every vendor verified, every payment traceable, every number real. Nathan and I planted a garden that spring. Tomatoes, basil, a row of herbs along the back fence. Something that grew because we tended it. Something that nobody else could take credit for. At work, I hired 2 new analysts for the finance department and promoted Pam to department coordinator. She cried in my office for about 3 seconds, then pulled herself together and asked when she could start. My mother called once, late March. "Your father is not well. His blood pressure, the stress." "I'm sorry to hear that. He can call me when he is ready to talk honestly." Gerald did not call. That was okay. I did not need him to. There was a boundary now. Clear. Visible. I loved my father. I did not trust him. And I had learned that those are different things. You can love someone and still refuse to let them use you. You can miss someone and still lock the door. Spring came early that year. The tomatoes grew faster than expected. Nathan built a trellis from scrap wood on a Saturday afternoon. I watched from the kitchen window and thought, this is what peace looks like when you earn it. I used to think that earning your place in a family meant being quiet, being useful, being the one who stayed late, caught the errors, and never asked for applause. But earning your place is not about what they let you do. It is about what you refuse to let them take. And the truth does not need a champagne toast or a stage or a 12-piece band. It just needs one person willing to press send. That is my story. 14 months of silence, 1 email at midnight, and a band that stopped playing. If this reminded you of your own midnight moment, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.